This is huge news, one of the biggest updates we've seen in years. Congress has officially passed a nationwide block on suppressor and SBR tax restrictions under the NFA, and now several states are pushing to go even further to end the NFA registry altogether. If that sounds too good to be true, stay tuned, because this isn't just political talk. Real bills, real lawsuits, and real states are moving right now to challenge how the ATF can regulate suppressors and short-barreled rifles. And if this lawsuit plays out the way many believe it will, it could completely rewrite what's considered restricted under federal gun law for the first time in almost 100 years. But to really understand how we got here, we need to go back a bit, because a single bill, H.R. 1, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill, started a chain reaction that might finally take down one of the most outdated gun laws in the country. So stick around, because this might just be the turning point gun owners have been waiting for. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what this change means for you, your firearms, and the future of suppressors and SBRS nationwide. To really understand what's happening right now, we need to talk about the law at the center of all this, the National Firearms Act, or NFA. The NFA was passed way back in 1934. It created a strict set of rules for certain firearms, things like suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and machine guns. But here's the key part. The entire law was built around a tax, a $200 tax for each of those items, which was an insane amount of money back then. That tax is what gave Congress the authority to regulate these firearms in the first place. It wasn't about banning them, it was about taxing and tracking them. That's how the government justified it under the Constitution. Fast forward almost 90 years later, and everything changed when H.R. 1, nicknamed the Big Beautiful Bill, passed through Congress. This bill officially reduced that $200 tax to $0. In other words, the NFA's original foundation, the tax itself, is now gone. And that's where things get interesting. If there's no tax, what gives the federal government the right to keep regulating these items? That's exactly what multiple gun rights organizations and several states are now asking in court. For the first time, we're seeing a coordinated effort to argue that without a tax, the NFA no longer has constitutional support. And if the courts agree, that could mean the entire registry system for suppressors and SBRS could be struck down. That means no more waiting months for approval, no more tax stamps, no more having to notify the ATF just to transport your firearm across state lines. This is why the issue matters so much, not just legally but practically. It's about whether law-abiding Americans should still be forced to register and track items that are no longer even taxed under federal law. And that brings us to the next major development, how this new change in Congress is already being used as the foundation for one of the biggest lawsuits the ATF has faced in years. After H.R. 1 officially dropped the NFA tax to $0, Congress didn't stop there. Lawmakers followed up by passing a nationwide block on enforcing the old suppressor and SBR tax restrictions. In simple terms, they confirmed that you can't enforce a tax that no longer exists, and that one move opened the door for something much bigger. Almost immediately, a coalition of 15 states joined together to push this even further. Their goal is simple but bold: to remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles from the NFA entirely. These states include Texas, Alaska, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Montana, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming. They're arguing that since Congress officially zeroed out the NFA tax, there's no legal foundation for the registry or the restrictions that come with it. Because remember, the NFA was only valid as long as it operated under Congress's taxing power. No tax means no authority. Imagine paying $0 for something, but still being forced to register it with the government and wait months for approval. That's what's been happening, and that's exactly what these states and organizations are fighting to end. This coalition is saying if there's no tax, the ATF can't legally require registration, approval, or reporting for these firearms. And if the courts agree, that could permanently erase suppressors and SBRS from NFA control. This isn't just about taxes, it's about principle. It's about whether a law that's lost its constitutional foundation can still be used to control law-abiding citizens. And this fight isn't just happening in Congress, it's now in the courts. Because right after this congressional block passed, several major organizations teamed up to file a direct lawsuit against the ATF to finish what Congress started. After the congressional block went through, several major gun rights organizations wasted no time. They teamed up and filed a joint lawsuit against the ATF, targeting the NFA directly. The organizations leading the charge include Gun Owners of America, GOA, FRAC, Silencer Shop, Palmetto State Armory, and Silencer Co., all well-known names in the firearms community. Their argument is straightforward. The NFA was created as a tax law, not a criminal or regulatory one. It was justified under Congress's power to tax. But now with that tax reduced to zero, the NFA no longer stands on constitutional ground. If the government isn't collecting a tax, it can't use the taxing power as a legal excuse to enforce registration, approval, or tracking requirements. So the lawsuit asks the courts to do two things: declare the NFA unconstitutional for suppressors and SBRS since the tax no longer exists. Stop the ATF and other federal agencies from enforcing any NFA-related rules on those items, like the registry, tax stamps, or travel notifications. And here's where things get even more serious. Those same 15 states that supported the congressional bloc are now official plaintiffs in the case. That means it's not just organizations suing, it's state governments going head-to-head with the federal government. The case has now reached the summary judgment phase, which basically means both sides are asking the court to make a decision quickly without dragging it through a full trial. Here's the timeline. The plaintiffs, GOA, the states, and the gun rights groups are set to file their motion for summary judgment on October 7th, 2025. The government's response and counter-motion are due November 6th, 2025. That means within a few short months, we could have a major ruling that decides whether suppressors and SBRS stay under the NFA or finally break free from it. If this lawsuit succeeds, the ATF's ability to regulate these items would collapse nationwide. No tax stamps, no registry, no waiting period. And that's why this case is being watched so closely, not just by gun owners, but by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Because what happens here could redefine how firearm regulation works in the United States. Whenever there's movement toward more freedom, there's always pushback, and this situation is no different. Right after the $0 tax reduction and the new lawsuits were filed, Democrats in Congress started working on ways to roll it all back. One of the biggest moves came from Senator Chris Murphy, who proposed an amendment to the military spending bill that would have increased the NFA tax to around $479 per stamp. That's more than double the original amount, and it's a clear attempt to counteract the $0 tax that Congress just approved. But while that's happening, Republicans are going in the opposite direction. Representative Andrew Clyde has introduced new legislation that aims to completely remove suppressors and SBRS from the NFA once and for all. So what we're seeing is a full-blown tug-of-war inside Washington. One side wants to rebuild the NFA's power, while the other is trying to dismantle it entirely. Now here's where it gets even more complicated, because the Trump administration's ATF and DOJ are caught right in the middle. They've taken pro-Second Amendment positions in some cases, but they've also defended the constitutionality of the NFA in others. For example, in a previous suppressor case known as the Peterson case, the Trump DOJ argued that suppressors are protected arms under the Second Amendment, but still defended the NFA by calling it a shall-issue permit system. That kind of reasoning could play a big role in how they respond to this current lawsuit. So the big question now is, what stance will the ATF take this time? Will they agree that the NFA has lost its constitutional foundation now that there's no tax? Or will they keep defending it as a valid regulation under some other federal power? Meanwhile, other cases related to suppressors and SBRS are already moving through the appeals courts, and two have even been sent to the Supreme Court for review. So no matter what happens in this main lawsuit, this issue is far from over. It's turning into a nationwide legal battle with Congress, state governments, and the courts all colliding at the same time. And depending on how these next few rulings go, we could be looking at a domino effect that changes federal gun law forever. Whenever big legal changes like this happen, confusion spreads fast. So let's clear up some of the most common misunderstandings floating around right now. Myth number one: suppressors and SBRS are now fully legal nationwide. Not true, at least, not yet. The $0 tax change has been passed, and the lawsuits are moving quickly. But until a court officially rules or Congress removes these items from the NFA, the existing registration system is still in place. You can't just go out tomorrow, buy a suppressor, and skip the paperwork. Myth number two: you don't have to register or file forms anymore. Also false. Even though the tax has been reduced to zero, the ATF still requires the paperwork because the registry itself hasn't been struck down yet. That's exactly what these lawsuits are trying to change. Myth number three: the ATF already lost this battle. Not exactly. The lawsuit is strong, but it's not over. The courts haven't made a final ruling yet. What's happening now is the summary judgment phase. That's where both sides ask the judge to decide the case without a trial. So while things are moving fast, nothing is official until the court signs off. And here's the big takeaway: just because the NFA's tax foundation is collapsing doesn't mean the ATF will give up easily. They've defended this law for decades, and they'll use every argument possible to keep it alive. So for now, the smart move is to stay informed and stay compliant until the legal dust settles. But make no mistake, the ground under the NFA is cracking, and the outcome of this case could completely reshape how suppressors and SBRS are regulated in America. So here's where things stand. Congress has officially blocked the old suppressor and SBR SBR tax restrictions. 15 states have stepped up, joining forces with major gun rights organizations to challenge the ATF and push to remove these items from the NFA entirely. The argument is simple. If the tax is gone, the law built around that tax can't stand. And if the courts agree, this could be the single biggest rollback of federal gun control we've seen since the NFA was created in 1934. But the fight isn't over yet. Democrats are already pushing to reinstate or even increase the tax. Republicans are trying to erase the NFA restrictions completely. And the courts, along with the ATF, are now under massive pressure to decide which side of history they want to stand on. The next few months are going to be critical. October 7th marks the first major filing deadline in this lawsuit, and by November, we could be looking at a decision that changes gun law forever. If the plaintiffs win, it could mean the end of the NFA registry for suppressors and short-barreled rifles. No more stamps, no more months of waiting, and no more unnecessary government tracking for law-abiding Americans. That's why this moment matters, because for the first time in nearly a century, the foundation of one of America's most restrictive gun laws is being challenged head-on, and it's happening fast. If you believe in protecting your rights, stay informed, stay involved, and stay ready. I'll keep you updated as soon as new developments come out. And if you found this video helpful, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this with other gun owners who need to know what's happening right now. This could be the turning point we've all been waiting for, and you'll want to be here when the next update drops, because this nation was built by armed citizens, and it'll be protected by them too.